You're now listening to the Peach Pundit Podcast, where we are expressing our own personal opinions. These views may not reflect the opinions of those whom we may be professionally affiliated.
Hey folks, welcome back to another episode of the Peach Pundit Podcast. I'm Jason Pye, joined by Buzz Brockway and Scott Turner. Hey guys. Well, better late than never, as I like to say. Buzz and I attempted to record on Wednesday, and because Scott was in the Imperial City doing imperialistic things.
Defending liberty.
But defending liberty. But I had internet connectivity issues, and Buzz and I had a little bit of a delay. So there was like a 2-second delay every time I would say something, and when Buzz tried to respond, it ended up with us talking over each other at different times.
It was really weird,
super awkward. And then I had a power outage, and that's what I get for being in the middle of nowhere with essentially something that was a little bit better than dial-up. So apologies, 1,000 apologies. But we got a lot of Georgia-related stuff to talk about today, but we're going to lead off with a little bit of national stuff. Last week, the Supreme Court issued another consequential decision, this one in West Virginia versus EPA, that had a lot to do with essentially like what the regulatory state can and can't do. And in this case, although it was somewhat of a moot point, considering that the Clean Power Plan had been repealed by the Trump administration. The Supreme Court ruled that it was still justiciable, meaning they could still issue a ruling on it, because the question of what was going to happen next sort of lingered, and the Trump era rule that repealed the Clean Power Plan had also been repealed. So, but it was a 6-3 decision, which I don't think it surprises anybody, considering the sort of breakdown and viewpoints of the various justices on the Supreme Court. But this case was pretty interesting in that we actually finally have some measure of a check for a runaway regulatory state. So, Buzz, I'll let you kick it off, since we were starting to discuss this on Wednesday and see what you have to say.
I read the decision. It was really, really fascinating because they talked a lot about, this is my translation of it, but you should have seen this coming when we ruled the way we did, the CDC trying to issue a eviction moratorium, OSHA trying to enforce a vaccine mandate, and now the EPA trying to tell power plants they can no longer exist except in certain forms. I guess if there was a theme to this, to a bunch of these different rulings, it was the court more or less saying, quit asking regulatory agencies and quit asking us as judges to do legislative jobs. So if Congress wants this to be, if Congress says that there should be no coal-fired plants in the United States of America, then let them pass a law saying so, and don't just expect regulators to go. I think it's a wonderful decision. I think it's really important. I think it was kind of hilarious to watch the reaction of members of Congress saying, "Oh my God, this is the end of the world. What are we going to do now?" And none of them seemed to say, "Oh, okay, tomorrow I'm dropping a bill to do X, Y, Z." None of them. I didn't see anybody do that. So it's just kind of preposterous.
Yeah. There are two key quotes from Gorsuch's concurrence that I want to read real fast because I thought they were pretty notable. While we all agree that administrative agencies have important roles to play in a modern nation, surely none of us wishes to abandon our republic's promise that the people and their representatives should have a meaningful say in the laws that govern them. That's the first one. And then the second one is, but the Constitution does not authorize agencies to use pen and phone regulations as substitute for laws passed by the people's representatives. And essentially, Scott, what the Supreme Court said was the EPA in promulgating and publishing the Clean Power Plan had acted outside of their authority granted by the Clean Air Act, and that if Congress wants to regulate in a way that the Clean Power Plan dictated, Congress has to explicitly authorize that. And for what it's worth, Reason Magazine had a really funny a really funny response to this that I just have to bring up, because they said on Instagram the other day, they said, SCOTUS says ambitious climate regulations need to come from Congress. Lawmakers are furious.
And that's the case with every one of these rulings that have come out of this court. The Buzz tapped on this concept of the theme of this session for the Supreme Court, and it is legislators, do your damn job, is what they've been saying. And if you're a legislator, well, I mean, we have so many. We don't have representatives in Congress. We have performance artists right now who do nothing more than beat their chest and foment dissent and foment anger and outrage. And of course, they're going to be outraged because they're going to have to actually do the damn work. Thanks to SCOTUS. I think this court in this session has set a tone that may actually save our republic, and let me explain why. Because the division that exists today exists because it's really easy for Marjorie Taylor Greene to point to AOC and say it's her, and AOC to point right back at Marjorie Taylor Greene and say it's her. And so I think those two encapsulate the problem, right? Yeah. Those two, one on each side, encapsulate the problem of people go to D.C. so that they can make TikTok videos or Facebook live streams about getting their nails did, and they're not doing the damn work. And because AOC walked in
distance.
How I'm responding to the overturn of Roe v. Wade by going to get my nails done because self-care is a type of resistance to oppression. No, you're getting your nails. Come on. You're a performance artist. And you know what you're going to have to do now is you're going to have to actually dig in on the policy, and you're going to have to work with the other side to get something done.
I think that's
just
key,
might save the republic.
That's a key point, Scott. I think that the idea that you actually have to try to persuade other legislators and the public that if we are really in a climate crisis where if we don't act now within the next couple of months or years, then the planet will cease to exist, then get out there and persuade people that that's the case, and could persuade people that your plan is the right way to do it. Don't try to do
and that's your
have
job.
A back door of it through a regulatory agency.
That's your job, and the court's telling them they need to go do their damn job.
All right, I have a number of different comments to make real fast here. AOC's video about the nail thing was characteristic of AOC in her first term, but in her second term, she's actually been relatively quiet. I think there are worse performance artists like Katie Porter, for example, with her damn whiteboard, and but Scott, you're right. I mean, Congress is basically a function of performative politics at this point in time, and it's frustrating as hell. The other thing I'll say is I'm a believer in anthropogenic climate change. I think we contribute to it for sure. I don't really think there's much we can do to address it, because everything you see that addresses it only marginally fixes the problem, which isn't really fixing the problem at all. And I also think, and to harken back to the book Jurassic Park, and written by Michael Crichton, who was a climate skeptic, he talks it through the character of Ian Malcolm. He gives a great speech in the book, which is sort of like that book's John Galt speech, where he basically talks about the arrogance of humans to think they can destroy the planet. That the planet's existed for 3 billion years, and it goes through these different cycles of life and so on and so forth. And humans have existed for 200,000 years or something like that. The planet will survive us, and it will survive after us, at least until the sun burns out. But I forget, there was another point I was going to make, but the final point I was going to make is the lawmaking process is not supposed to be easy.
Right.
Buzz is absolutely right. It's supposed to be collaborative. It's supposed to be consensus. And, if you can't, and I realize a lot of people are upset with the filibuster. I happen to think the filibuster is a good thing. And believe me, when Republicans take back the House, in the likely event they take back the House, I'm not convinced of how big their margin is going to be, but in the likely event they take back the House, you're going to be okay. Or if the Republicans take back the Senate, you're going to be okay with the filibuster if you're a Democrat, because that 60 vote threshold is really going to protect you from a national abortion ban or whatever, or repealing, they're not going to repeal the ACA because they've tried that once before and failed miserably. Right. But you see what I'm saying. There are going to be things that Democrats want to protect that 60 vote threshold is going to keep in place. If you want to address the problems that society faces, you have to do it through building of consensus. We've forgotten how to do that because we're so focused on the margins that we're neglecting the center. And I don't consider myself to be a moderate by any stretch of the imagination. I've known both of these assholes for a really long time. Neither one of them would consider me a moderate by any stretch of the imagination. I'm an extremist. I want to consider myself an extremist in today's politics, but I can't because you people in Washington, D.C. keep driving me crazy. I'm off my soapbox. I've said this before. I don't know if I've said it on the podcast, but I've said this to friends before. Make Jason Pye not the adult in the room once again. Because if I'm one of the adults in the room in American politics, there is something wrong.
We are so screwed if Jason Pye is the adult in the room.
If I'm one of the adults in the room, that's what I mean to say. But so turning our attention, stepping off my soapbox and turning our attention to Georgia politics, Stacey Abrams, she's going to be a formidable opponent. She has raised $22 million in 2 months, which I don't think her fundraising prowess really surprises anyone. But she did outraise Governor Kemp. Kemp raised looks like $6.8 million for his campaign. He has $6.4 million cash on hand as of the end of June. But Abrams has $18.5 million cash on hand. Guys, obviously the fundraising machine. I tend to, if fundraising mattered, Lindsey Graham would have lost. Mitch McConnell would have lost. I think it matters for sure, but it's not the only thing that matters. You saw races in the fall last year where millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars were poured into these races, and the Republicans still prevail. But Georgia, we need no more of a reminder that Georgia's a competitive state now. Scott,
it's a scary number, right? $22 million. I think about what kind of campaign I could run on that. The most expensive campaign I ever had was $16,000. and I try to extrapolate what I could do with $22 million in a winning campaign. Oh my gosh, dude, that is a scary number. But here's the thing. And it's, just if you're looking at numbers and the difference, it's scary, but it is still a terrible year to be a Democrat, not only in Georgia, but in this country, but specifically here. Brian Kemp continues to do well as far as governing the state. His policies, which we could talk about, I guess, as part of this conversation, are being adopted and co-opted by Stacey Abrams. So I think he has enough. I think he has enough resources to make the case, in spite of the onslaught where she tries to remake herself, and she has enough money to try to reimage and repackage herself as more of a moderate. And everybody at this point knows she's no moderate, right? She's not in the center. She's very far left. Her views are very far left. She's come to the center on abortion. She's trying to come to the center on dozens of other policy positions, but she's not fooling anybody, I don't think. So in the end, she can't, no amount of money, hundreds of millions of dollars is going to be able to fool voters when they get to the ballot box in November. They're going to know who she is because she has a record. She has things she said. And when her campaign speeches in Virginia, as an example, on everything from school choice and parents shouldn't have a say and what their education is for their children, to her stances on abortion up to the moment of birth, those things aren't going away, and no amount of money is going to cover it up.
Buzz, I want to get your take on the budget stuff in a second, but let's talk about the fundraising. First.
It's an astounding number. I thought the other day when Kemp's numbers came out, I thought, hey, $6.8 million is pretty good. But gosh, she's just, it's almost, I think the danger for Kemp is that with this is that Abrams can buy up all available airtime, and he's going to have to rely on media making new airtime for him to run his ads. And She just kind of flood it. Now, I guess the thing about it is the way Abrams has always run her campaigns, she has a pretty high burn rate. It's an expensive campaign because what she does is she has this, if she's doing the same thing that she did 4 years ago, which I suspect she will do, it's kind of the Obama model where you just have massive numbers of people going out into the community to talk to every living, breathing person to try to get them to the polls. So, it's expensive to run that kind of campaign, but she can raise the money to do it. So I don't know, man. I think it's. I know Brian Kemp works hard. He has worked hard. He's going to continue to work hard. His team's going to work hard. But man, it's staggering sum of money that she's raised thus far, and there's no reason to think that she's not going to continue to raise that kind of money.
Yeah. But on the budget side, it's clear she's trying to emulate Governor Kemp. And just a quote from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution here from our friends over there. They write, 3 of Stacey Abrams' key policy proposals amount to efforts to one-up Governor Brian Kemp, a plan to raise teacher pay by at least $11,000, to hike salaries of some law enforcement officers by more than $10,000, and to extend a gas tax break through the end of the year. And more notably, James Salzer with the AJC has given the price tag of about $800 million in new spending for a roughly $30 billion budget. And that doesn't include the federal dollars that Georgia gets. That's just state tax revenue that comes in. So let me, and Buzz and I were trying to discuss this on Wednesday, but yes, in 2007, 2008, when the economy collapsed, there were, basically austerity cuts. Georgia had to cut spending because they had let their budget grow so much under Governor Perdue, who was frequently rated by the Cato Institute on their governor's report card as with like a C or a D in on fiscal policy. The state's budget grew too fast, and it forced a lot of these cuts. And it hurt. It hurt a lot of people around the state because of the how hard we were hit, particularly Georgia, with the housing market the way it was in Georgia. And then we also saw across the board 14% cuts, I believe 14% at the beginning of the pandemic under Governor Kemp. And obviously, that affected every state, and it was because of the sort of extremeness. We were essentially facing what was a mini depression or a short-term depression. And unemployment hit as high as 15% nationally. Georgia recovered better and faster than most, and has actually now been able to. We have a surplus now, but I think the question is Abrams, given how Georgia has a strong governor, the governor sets a revenue target. Abrams' spending proposals seem to be sort of those who don't learn from history are going to repeat it type situation where we're building the budget too much too fast, and once we have a recession, which we may already be in one as far as we know, we're going to be facing more budget cuts, and those budget cuts are going to hurt because people are going to be relying on those dollars for whatever their programs are for, and we're not going to be able to afford it. So, Buzz, I'll start with you first, since you're both of you are budget policy wonks.
Right. So a big portion
Buzz,
of Georgia's budget is formula driven. The QBE formula in education, Medicaid, it's formula driven. The student population at the university system, other things. So obviously, she says she's not going to raise taxes. There's other restrictions on what you can do. You cannot borrow money to close a budget deficit, so she won't have that available to her. I don't see how she keeps this campaign promise, quite frankly, because you can move money around and set different priorities as the governor, and I'm sure she'll do that. But $800 million worth, that's a lot of money to be moving around. And I don't know. I don't know how the heck she keeps a promise of not raising taxes, unless it's some sort of one with an asterisk where it's only raising taxes on certain people and not on others. But even then she's capped because we passed a constitutional amendment. You can't raise, what is it, Scott, 6%, I think? You can't raise the income tax above 6%. So correct. And we've cut it since then so that she could raise taxes on certain people to that level, and maybe that's how she, it's a promise with an asterisk. But I don't see how at these levels of funding she's going to. But one other point I want to make about that, if you read Greg Bluestein's book, Flipped, he talks about how Democrats made a conscious decision after John Ossoff lost to Karen Handel that playing the moderate is not going to work, that what you need to do is go hard left and energize your base, and that's how you have the best chance to win. So Abrams trying to copy all these things of Brian Kemp is not going hard left. So either she's changed strategies again and knowing that that's a dumb idea in this political environment. It got her close 4 years ago playing hard left, but maybe she's concluded that won't help her win this time. But I don't know, that's an interesting shift in strategy and wonder what effect it will have on a progressive base to where she talks about, funding police at such high levels as she wants to fund them. We'll see how the left part of her base, the progressive base, reacts to that.
Scott, let me ask you real fast before you jump into all the budget stuff. I mentioned that the governor sets a revenue target, but with what will almost certainly be, a Republican legislature in the fall or going into next year for her, at least her first 2 years as governor, assuming she wins. A lot of her proposals are going to be DOA in the legislature. She's not going to be able to effectively govern, and she might even see. She'll see fierce resistance. She might not be able to see her power stripped, considering how much it takes to override a governor's veto, but she will see a lot of resistance in the Georgia General Assembly for sure.
If we know that the legislature is going to be in Republican control, even if she wins somehow and becomes governor, so she could set the revenue number, and the legislature is free to work within that number to distribute that money however they see fit. So there's your check and balance on the budget process. The governor says, we want $30 billion. There'll be $30 billion. That is a projected number. The worst thing in the world for any governor to do is make a projection and then miss, because then there's a special session. We all come in, and then we have to vote on what we're actually going to cut, which happened before I got elected. I don't know. Were you elected when they did that, Buzz?
I think it was before me. That was in the
happened
in 08? I think it was before me.
Yeah. So you never want to miss your projections, but it is sort of a bully pulpit once the governor sets that number. So if it is, I think the highest number for me when I was in the legislature was $26 billion. It was $18 billion when I got there. And we're talking only state dollars, not federal. It's even bigger when you start adding the federal dollars. But we'll for the purpose of this conversation, we'll focus on the state. So she could say, we're going to do $30 billion, and it includes that extra $800 million that James was talking about from the AJC. But the legislature gets to say, we're going to give this much to teachers, and even though there's a formula, as Buzz mentioned, called Quality Basic Education, or QBE, that sets the school funding, the legislature is free to ignore it per the law. It actually says subject to appropriations in that particular formula. So that's driven by formula, but the legislature has its discretion on whether or not to fund it fully or move the dollars somewhere else. So she could say whatever number she wants. David Ralston and probably Burt Jones are going to be the ones who are going to decide how that gets split up. Like Tillery and the I don't know who the House Appropriation Chair will be, but Blake Tillery certainly will be there next year. He's been there now for several years after Jack Hill passed away, and he knows what he's doing. So, and he knows where the needs are in the state. So I believe Blake Cylinder Tillery will end up being one of the more powerful people in the Senate, possibly in the state, moving forward, no matter who the governor is. But all that to say, I think this is all campaign rhetoric, man. I think she's just making a bunch of promises in hopes that it sticks. And she's already, if the AJC is calling her out for adopting what Kemp is already doing and just trying to throw more money at it, that's pretty telling too, because the AJC is no friend of any Republican. They'll nibble around the edges and try to be fair at times, but we recognize that they're openly cheering for the Democrats, and for them to say, hey, look, all of Stacey's primary policy goals are already being done. That's pretty telling too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I do think we need to switch gears here, because this is I don't quite know how to say this, but I think a lot of our worst fears about Herschel Walker's campaign are beginning to be realized.
Oh boy.
And I don't really know what else to say about it than that. So the Daily Beast has become probably the one-stop shop for tracking the Walker campaign.
Yeah. And
the story that came out yesterday, is pretty notable in the sense that Walker, at least leaks from his campaign, are saying that his own staff isn't trusting him. And I'll quote a piece from the article. Emails and texts show advisors discussing how they don't trust Walker, both to tell the truth to them and to handle campaign events properly, and harboring concerns that he isn't mentally fit for the job. He spouts falsehoods like he's breathing. One advisor said, so much so that his own campaign stopped believing him long ago. He's lied so much that we don't know what's true, the person said, adding that aides have zero trust in the candidate. 3 people interviewed for this article independently called him a pathological liar. Now, guys,
the Daily Beast.
You can't. It is the Daily Beast, but at the same time, I still see Georgia ads, and I have not seen a single ad from the Walker campaign yet. And I've seen several ads, or at least a couple ads from Warnock's campaign. And I realize most voters don't start paying attention until after Labor Day, but at the very least, if you're a Republican in Georgia, or a national Republican, and you want to take back control of the Senate, you can't. I don't know that you can do that without winning Georgia.
I mean, Walker's campaign, I haven't seen an ad on TV yet, but he released a video of what's going to be his first ad, and it's a positive message. But no, this is troubling, and it is, it's what we were worried about. We've been talking about. He only makes appearances in very controlled environments. He's not. Eric Erickson tweeted the other day that he invited all the Senate candidates onto his show. I believe almost all of them went on his show except for Herschel, because he couldn't be on the air for an hour taking questions. So it is very troubling, and I don't know how you excuse me. I don't know how you run a campaign these days that's there's so much reliant on media, on public appearances, on voters want to be able to ask these candidates questions and have them answer them. And I don't know how, Herschel's campaign can let him be in that kind of situation. So it's very troubling. He still may win. He still might win. But it's going to be a rough campaign.
Yeah. I mean, Erickson, to his credit, does say, in fairness, he didn't need the exposure. Erickson had also been critical of him, as well as the other candidates. But Eric also says that the environment for the Democrats in Georgia is way worse than the media would have you believe. So there is that. So Scott, what do you make of this? And it can't be
it is the Daily Beast. I mean, we got which means find your salt shaker and pour the whole jar into whatever the dish is that you're cooking, because it has to be taken with many grains of salt. If I'm Herschel Walker right now, I'm thinking about who I'm going to fire. To show as an example of, we don't tolerate leaks in this campaign, and we need everybody pulling in the same direction. If these people actually were part of the campaign, if they actually did speak to the Daily Beast, first of all, if you're a Republican strategist, what the hell are you doing talking to the Daily Beast? I mean, what are your goals? How do you think that's going to play out for you long term? I mean, are you even thinking slightly about your own future? Because if you're found out, and these things get found out, your reputation is toast for the rest of your political career. Nobody's going to trust you. Nobody wants somebody like that working in their administration or on their staff or as part of their campaign. So that's something I would be looking at. But look, there's a reason why, since Herschel Walker got into the race as a candidate for the Republican nomination, I said, I'm willing to vote for him if he'll show me a reason to vote for him. And he never did. I do not vote for celebrities just because they're celebrities. I want to vote for somebody who knows the issues, because I know what it's like as a former legislator, even at the AA level here in Georgia. I understand what it's like to have to get into to details on stuff that you may not have a preference for learning about, property conveyances and stuff like that. I got to learn about property. Okay, I'm an IT guy. All right, I get it. It's a lot of work, right? Herschel hasn't shown he was willing to do the work. Herschel needs to start learning. He's showing us, not just the Republican base. I think the Republican base is going to vote for him. But for those people who are thinking about, is Warnock so bad? Yeah, he's going to have to do the work. And saying Joe Biden and Biden inflation and screaming radical leftists isn't going to work. We already know that. So he has to put in the effort. He has to go to the practice field and do his time. He's not doing that yet. And that does concern me, regardless of what the Daily Beast says. It concerns me that I am not seeing the work. He's not hitting the weights. He's not doing the training. He's not on the treadmill. He's not putting in the effort. And that's deadly concerning to me regarding our chances in November.
Just one last point. When we were talking about SCOTUS, the theme of SCOTUS this year was legislators, as Scott succinctly put it, legislators do your job. Is he up to that? I mean, I can't vote for Warnock. I just too philosophically disagree with him just way too much. I want to vote for Herschel because I think, philosophically he's much more aligned with me on that. But I really worry not just about his ability to win his campaign, but his ability to do the job.
Right.
But he's the Republican nominee, so there you go. Maybe we shouldn't let Donald Trump pick our candidates.
Yeah.
Well, in fairness, Trump didn't. Yeah, Herschel was going to win because Herschel won a Heisman and a national championship.
Yeah, that's true.
And for a lot of people who went to vote for him, that was all that was needed.
Yeah, and that may play out in the fall, right? I mean, that may. I mean, Georgia fans are still. I see them, man. They're floating on air. They're still floating on air, and Herschel, continues to bring those warm feelings, thrills up their legs and stuff. So. He may win.
Yeah. Right. And maybe all he needs.
So Buzz said the magic word. He mentioned Donald Trump. So we will go into this can of shit.
You're going to have to change the language notifier to it and add an E on Spotify.
The fecal festival that is Fulton County.
I don't regret it.
Investigation.
Yeah. So Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis has subpoenaed Lindsey Graham, Cleta Mitchell, who is just a special person, Kenneth Cheeseborough, Jenna Ellis, and Jackie Pick-Eason. I actually know two of these people, and John Eastman as well, and Rudy Giuliani. Lindsey Graham says he's going to fight the subpoena, which we'll see how that plays out for him. Guys, I don't know what to make of this because. Every time I listen to CNN, everybody talks about the potential criminal case in Fulton County, Georgia, and I'm like, I don't know. I personally, do I think there's criminal culpability?
Nah.
Sure, yeah, it's clear he tried to influence it. I'm talking more about the federal side in terms of obstructing official proceeding. At the state side, I don't know. Show me what laws were broken specifically. And this is beginning. While trust me, I am no fan of Donald Trump or Rudy Giuliani for that matter, or Cleta Mitchell for that matter. I can't stand that woman. I do want to. I just don't. This seems like a bit of a fishing expedition.
It does. I mean, I don't know what the end game is. I do know she's taken a very long time. We're moving in on 3 years since this has gone on, where she's dragging her feet, and it's obvious that she's trying to make it into next year. to make this an issue in case Donald Trump is seeking the Republican nomination again. And that I can't help but escape that cynicism. Yeah. Jason, I can. I mean, it's like, what is her motivation here, Fani Willis specifically, especially since she's holding fundraisers for other candidates that are running for statewide office? The Lindsey Graham did have a conversation with the Secretary of State. It was recorded. It was not nearly as inflammatory as the "find me the votes" comment that Donald Trump made. He asked questions about things that he'd heard, and he got answers, and then he didn't do anything. He was asking questions, which I think any U.S. senator is allowed to ask, especially if they're going to be asked to certify a vote once the electoral votes are counted on January 6th. So I think he was acting fully within his rights in his capacity as a U.S. senator. And for him to be dragged down here for some dog and pony show is, come on. It's ridiculous. It's performative. We have, if Fani Willis, yet another performance artist, she's definitely a partisan, and her motivations therefore are now in question because of that.
Yeah, hard to disagree with what Scott said. I think I didn't think she was trying to milk this for all it's worth, and it should be looked into. It absolutely should be investigated and looked into, no doubt about it. But subpoenaing all these folks. I mean, you know what? It's just going to create all kinds of media attention because this same group of people, except for Lindsey Graham and maybe a couple of the others, who the January 6th Commission is after, trying to get them to come and testify. So, I don't know. Maybe it makes it seem like it's the January 6th Commission Southern edition, as opposed to a serious look at try to find out if these people tried to improperly influence the vote counters in Georgia from doing their jobs.
Well, I think the January 6th Commission, the way they've handled their investigation, has a lot more credibility than the way that Fani Willis has handled hers. Because if you look at the way the January 6th committee is handling its investigation, it's being very careful, very meticulous, and they're not trying to appear. And I want to be clear here. I understand the makeup of the committee. There are 2 Republicans on the committee, both of whom don't like Donald Trump, but the way they're handling it in public does appear to be less biased. Not saying it's not biased, but less biased than what Fani Willis is doing. And not only that, I mean, they're talking to witnesses who were literally in the room the day of January 6th. They're talking to Pat Cipollone today, who was the White House counsel, and I think his testimony it's either going to give credibility to what Cassidy Hutchinson said, or it's not. And so far, she's been the most compelling witness to testify. But I do want to move to the next. And by the way, I do want to repeat my point here that I think the federal case for prosecuting Donald Trump is much better than the local case, the Fulton County case for prosecuting Trump. But so some state legislators had also been subpoenaed by Fani Willis, and they tried to quash the subpoenas. They were unsuccessful. And Scott has a bit of a constitutional issue with this as far as it goes, because the state constitution essentially prohibits this. Yeah. Scott, why don't you jump in and tell us why this?
So she first, as a member of the legislature, Article 2, was it Section 4, Paragraph 9 of the state constitution. I'm going to read just part of it, right? It's the privileges of members. And this is also in here where you can't get arrested while you're a member of the legislature and the legislature is in session and you're on your way. And the reason for that is because sometimes sheriffs don't like your point of view on a particular issue. And in Georgia history, legislators had been stopped on their way to legislating to keep them from voting or participating in committee hearings. So there's actually in the state constitution, it says it's a get out of jail free card. Unless I've committed a felony, you got to let me go. It doesn't really get used a whole lot, to be honest, but it's there for our protection. But it also says that that no member shall be liable to answer in any other place for anything spoken in either house or in any committee meeting of either house. And what that means is that I cannot be called into court. I cannot be charged with a crime for something that I'm saying in a committee hearing, or if I'm in a floor speech. And part of that is my votes or something I would write down to express an opinion about something. You cannot make me liable to answer for that constitutionally. And there's a reason for that as well. And the benefit to the legislative process is it allows for collegiality. It allows for us to debate amongst ourselves without the fear of retribution or reprisal. And that's critical when you're looking for solutions instead of trying to find ways to skewer each other publicly, which I think ultimately this will cause people to draw in their within them and their own circles and create more tribalism within our state government. And the state constitution clearly protects them from having to do that. So I think this judge is way out of bounds. If I was one of the legislators, and look, I was on a committee that heard testimony from Rudy Giuliani, and I was typing privately, these things that he is saying are untrue, right? Yeah. Like I was pointing out that it was not a suitcase full of ballots. It was a ballot box full of ballots. And that was what they look like, for example. And Rudy Giuliani I was never allowed to actually ask questions of Rudy Giuliani because they knew I was going to ask him that question. Do you know the difference between a suitcase and a ballot box? And I told them that's a question I wanted to ask, and they wouldn't let me ask. I got never would allow me to get called on to ask Rudy Giuliani a single question. So I'm no fan of the stop the steal stuff, but you can't constitutionally violate this principle just because it makes you feel good. The judge is way out of bounds. He even says, I'm not sure what this is going to look like because it's unprecedented. The reason why it's unprecedented is because it's not supposed to happen.
Right.
The fact that you are going to now take up Article 1 legislative powers and rewrite the Constitution on the fly should be a big red flag for you, Judge. It should be. And you should stop doing what you're doing because it's wrong.
Yeah, take it then.
Personally, I'm ready for Personally, I'm ready for president times.
Break all the norms. Huh? This seems to me like a perfect thing to take to the state Supreme Court to settle this. And is this proper or not, constitutional or not? Yeah,
and I think if I were, I don't know how you do that. Do you ask for immediate relief from? In the form of an appeal on a ruling? I mean, how does that work?
Well,
yeah. No, I mean, I think
probably via the AG's office. I think they're going to represent you. Tell them you want to appeal, and if they won't, I'm sure Chris Carr's office would. But take this because Scott, as you said, it is unprecedented. I don't know of another time. I mean, since I've been following the legislature, of legislators being subpoenaed to go and attempt to try to compel them to go testify for a grand jury. That needs to be settled. It is unprecedented. We need to know. These are important constitutional questions that need to be answered. What's that limit? There's,
Yeah. And by the way, this is not in the agenda, but today during the press conference on Joe Biden's executive order on abortion access, he accidentally read part of the teleprompter that said "repeat the line." Apparently, it was an important quote, and the teleprompter said "repeat the line," and so Joe Biden said,
"Stay classy, San Diego."
Repeat the
He's
line.
Following instructions very cautiously. So.
Actually, what it was I'm Ron Burgundy.
I'm Joe Biden.
I'm Joe Biden. I should have mentioned that before our last segment, which is particularly funny. But before I get to our last segment, let me get to the next to the last segment, which is David Ralston, House Speaker David Ralston, has written a letter to Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred, essentially saying, "Bring us the All-Star game," after it was unceremoniously pulled out of Atlanta last year. First of all, I would have appreciated a letter from David Ralston that said, "Please resign, Rob Manfred," not because of the All-Star game, just because you're a terrible commissioner of Major League Baseball. But especially because last time I checked, Shoeless Joe Jackson and Pete Rose are still ineligible for the Hall of Fame because it's banned for life by Major League Baseball. But if the commissioner were put to a vote, and I'm actually, you know what, guys, I'm going to go ahead and say it. There should be a constitutional amendment allowing a popular vote for the commissioner of Major League Baseball.
I would be okay with doing away with their antitrust exemption. That I would start there.
Okay,
well,
okay, Mike Lee.
Hey, I added this to the agenda because I make the agenda. I added this to the agenda so I could say the words, "You go, David Ralston. You go, boy. I'm so proud of you right now." Yes, I'm with you. 10,000%. This opportunity, I'm not going to let this opportunity to pass to say that you, David Ralston, are doing the right thing.
We need to take that clip and send it. Take that clip, send it to Speaker Ralston right now.
Yeah. Spiro. Hi.
So before you weigh in here, Buzz, I do want to note this is what David Ralston wrote to Commissioner Manfred. Having just completed a statewide primary election in May under the provisions of SB 202, we can report that there was record early voting turnout with no credible claims of irregularities. As such, I call on you to award a future MLB All-Star game to be played at Truist Park in the coming years. The sooner this announcement is made, the quicker we can all put this unfortunate incident
can we co-sign that letter with him? That's what I want to know. Will he let us co-sign it?
Yeah. Yeah. Major League Baseball owes us two things. They owe us an apology and an All-Star game. We've said that on here on the podcast in the past. David Ralston's on board. I'm with him.
Would you just take the All-Star game?
I'd rather have the apology, but I'll take the All-Star game
because
it would be symbolic of, hey, we were wrong.
Yeah,
it would be a huge symbol that they admitted, yeah, we got that one wrong. The data just isn't there to back up our initial knee-jerk reaction to what happened.
And we can boo him.
We apologize.
We can boo Manfred as he sits there watching a game.
Yeah, well, we did that during the World Series, so that was fun.
Before we move on, I do want to note that the Braves beat the crap out of the Reds earlier this week, and earlier this week. It was a lot of fun. And Scott, who gave me hell for pulling for the Rams during the Super Bowl, is not even truly a Braves fan. He's a Cincinnati Reds fan. I just want the Peach Pundit podcast audience to know this, that Scott, Mr. You can't pull for the LA Rams, is a Cincinnati Reds fan.
Oh, I like the Braves. They're my second favorite team. But I'll tell you this. Jesus loves you, Jason Pye, but I right now am having a hard time doing the same.
You will love me because our next topic is the one Scott has been
the one
for.
I'm so excited that we waited to podcast till today so that I could participate in this conversation.
So our podcast typically runs between an hour and 15 minutes to an hour and a half. We are at 48 minutes right now. We're going to give Scott the 45 minutes to talk about this, because for those of you who may not have heard, the Georgia Guidestones.
Yeah. You got to tell them what the Georgia Guidestones are.
Just I'm going to.
No, they're not down.
They're still there.
No, they're not. They got torn down.
They're knocked them down for safety reasons. Yeah.
No, they knocked them down.
Gone.
They tore them down. Oh. Okay. Well, I hadn't seen that. I just saw they got blown up. So let me read. The Georgia Guidestones are a monument that was not mysteriously created. It's in Elberton, Georgia.
It's where I go hunting on a regular basis.
I guess north of Athens.
Middle of nowhere.
That's where Scott goes to shoot Bambi on a regular basis. So in the late 1970s, someone Mr. R.C. Christian or Robert C. Christian, basically paid to have these Guidestones made, and they've been a source of controversy, particularly like conspiracy theories about the New World Order. There are 10 different planks to the Georgia Guidestones. The first they read as follows: maintain humanity under 500 million in perpetual balance with nature, guide reproduction wisely, improving fitness and diversity, unite humanity with a new living language, rule passion, faith, traditions, and all things with tempered reason, protect people and nations with fair laws and just courts, let all nations rule eternally, resolving external disputes in a world court, avoid petty laws and useless officials. God, I agree with that one. Balance personal rights with social duties, prize truth, beauty, love, seeking harmony with the infinite, be not a cancer on the earth, leave room for nature, leave room for nature. Now, as I mentioned, that the Georgia Guidestones have been a source of controversy and conspiracy theories, with some alleging that they're satanic. There was a tweet at 10:37 a.m. on July 6, 2022, the year of our Allah, who says, and this is from Kandiss Taylor, who lost. I want to repeat, she lost the Republican primary for governor to Brian Kemp. She lost once again because I know she doesn't believe in the fake news. God is God all by himself. He can do anything he wants to do. That includes striking down satanic Guidestones. The Guidestones in the mind of Kandiss Taylor are satanic. Now, she put out yesterday, I believe, a very awkward 4+ minute video.
Can I interject for just a second?
Fake news.
And you little podcasters, she said.
Absolutely, Scott.
You little I'm attacked.
And you little podcasters.
She's talking about you, Scott.
She's actually talking about the three of us, not just me, the three of us. Because she knows we make fun of her on a regular basis.
I mean, and
because she threatened to sue us.
So. Do you know why we're going to continue doing so? Because she threatened to sue us, and be honest, at this point in time, making fun of her kids. So, Scott. Holy crap. Go ahead. Just
All right. So look, the Georgia Guidestones are weird, right? Mm-hmm. But they are, to me, they're emblematic.
Yes.
They're creepy.
They're creepy. They are creepy.
And I don't
really
agree
creepy
with what was written there.
Yep.
But they're emblematic to me of First Amendment speech, right? I mean, these guys, this organization, they raised money. They paid a ton of money to have these things quarried and then sculpted and then placed in such a way that they acted like a sort of like a Stonehenge for Georgia and became a tourist attraction for the city of Elberton. So the city of Elberton is going to suffer for this loss. But what's interesting to me is that Kandiss Taylor, first of all, I think her IQ is probably equivalent to the stone that was made in that made up the monument for the Georgia Guidestones, right? I don't think she's a terribly bright person. Threatening us by, the media and us, saying that we are going to face legal ramifications. If she wants to sue us, all right, fine. We're going to speak purely in fact here. And the fact is, my opinion is that she's not a very bright person. And she hasn't done anything to this point to prove me wrong. This is a woman who sold women's underwear with her campaign logo on her campaign website.
And she accused people who she suggested that people who homeschool should school their children.
Yes, she did do that. And frankly, she's trying to say now, don't tie me to this. She issued a fake executive order number 10. She made like a 3-minute long video using the Stu Peters, whoever that dude's production crew was, to go out there with a drone and her walking up onto the monument in this really dramatic aspect saying these are satanic and whatever. She issued this is a fact. She issued a fake executive order saying when I'm in office, on my first day, I will destroy. And now she's trying to say, well, I would have done it legally. And that this act of destruction was illegal. But she also said, well, it could have been lightning. And lightning's God, and God can do whatever he wants.
Yeah.
And it's probably lightning. And until somebody shows me a human being walking up there and blowing it up, I'm going to say it was God, because that's what I believe. Well, guess what? They should release the footage today. It's really grainy. You can't tell who it was, but this dude runs up there holding something really heavy, and he runs away as fast as he can, and he blows the hell out of it.
Yeah.
And they got that video where one of the stones just absolutely crumbles, and they actually had to knock the whole thing down.
Yeah.
But you cannot say that, because she also talks about they attack our monuments and then they raise monuments to their own gods, right? Saying that the Guidestones were a monument to somebody else's gods. But she also shows footage of people attacking and destroying Confederate monuments. And so here's the thing.
That's not my God either.
Right. That's not my God either, but I will vote to protect monuments, because those are emblematic of First Amendment protected speech. I don't have to agree with the monument. I don't have to agree with what was represented there. Mm-hmm. They were placed at a different time by people who had different value sets than me, and that's fine. I'm not offended by the written word, and I can look at something like the Guidestones and say, I'm not worshiping that. I see it, but that's not my God, and that's not my altar, and that's not where I go to worship. And as an American, I can respect that somebody else has that point of view, so much so that they put their resources into building something like that. You, Kandiss Taylor, are anti-American by saying you destroy these things, and you're not smart enough to realize that as a candidate for public office, statewide public office, that your words could be potentially inspiring an act like this. So are you connected? The proof is not yet made. But it doesn't take a rocket science degree to connect that point A and that point B. You said you destroy these things. You called them satanic. You have 40-something thousand people who voted for you. And it's not unreasonable to say that one of those 40-something thousand people decided to take you up on it and destroy those things because they look pretty darn creepy, right?
All right.
I think we should say, a case has to be made, but you can't discount the fact that someone was inspired by what she had said to go and do that, because the Guidestones had been subject to vandalism over the course of the years. They've been spray painted over, but no, as far as I know, no one's ever tried to blow them up before, and they've been there for 40 plus years. But the let's say the thing I have a concern with, let's say I adopt the religion of the flying spaghetti monster. Let's just say, and on my property, which may be close to a major highway, and look, I may or may not be planning to do something like this. I don't know. I could, but let's say I get some property on somewhere on Interstate 95, and I build a big monument to the flying spaghetti monster right there on I-95 where everybody who drives by it can see it. There's a couple Confederate flags, by the way. There's one in North Carolina, and there's one in Virginia on 95 that I see every time I drive by. Make me sick to my stomach. The only good Confederate flag is one that's on fire. But if I decide to do that on my private property, you have no right whatsoever to tell me I can't do it. And this is where I'm going to use this with certain types of conservatives, particularly social conservatives these days. And I don't mean to make a broad generalization, but I keep hearing about the rule of law. But why is it to insist on the rule of law, you have to break the law? I mean, well, you're not even insisting on the rule of law. The people who talk about rule of law seem to be the ones who are okay with breaking the law. And I'm tired of hearing conservatives talk about the rule of law when they don't really seem to respect it all that much. Whether you're trying to overthrow a presidential election, or maybe you inspire someone to go and use C4 or whatever the hell it was, or homemade bomb to go blow up, at the end of the day, a curious tourist attraction, even if it is a little creepy.
A lot creepy.
And not just a little
well,
creepy.
I just got to push back a little bit. I agree. People like Kandiss Taylor and every other person who seeks public office, they need to be careful in their rhetoric and wise in their rhetoric. But I think we got to be careful in saying that, that that she inspired. We have no idea who did this. We have no idea, and that's, these sorts of accusations get thrown around in politics all the time. Bill Clinton accused Rush Limbaugh of inspiring Timothy McVeigh to blow up the Murrah building in Oklahoma City. Bernie Sanders got blamed for the guy who went and shot up, almost killed Barry Loudermilk and hit Steve Scalise and these other people. I think we got to be real careful about that. Yes, Kandiss Taylor is a fringe candidate. She was a fringe candidate. She'll continue to be a fringe candidate because I'm sure this has inspired her to run for something else again. She's not going to leave the political scene, and she should check her rhetoric, no doubt about it. But I don't think I think we got to be careful in saying that she inspired this because we don't know. We have no idea. The Guidestones, as y'all have mentioned, have been vandalized before. They've become the QAnon crowd has latched onto this and are looking at this, and Kandiss played right into all that stuff, but we have no idea who did this. And then we can't make that leap, I don't think, to say you can draw a clear line, because we don't know that at all. That being said, she's weird. She's irresponsible in the way she talks about all sorts of things. And, there's a reason she finished dead last and only got a couple % of the vote. So.
Well, this is what I would hope for Kandiss Taylor. and I agree that you can't absolutely draw the line from point A to point B. You can't directly connect her at this point. I do think there should be an investigation. And if they catch this person, they should ask the person, what inspired you to do this? And since I am not a gambling man, I wouldn't put money on it. But if I were, I would bet that there was a connection, because it's just so soon, and she did have resources. And there are people that are still on my Facebook page talking about how she got screwed out of the election, and she hasn't conceded and she shouldn't concede. There are still people out there that she is inspired. She does have a fringe following. They're fringe, but they are still there. And because they're fringe, they might do fringe things. So you can't directly connect her, but boy,
but you can't
it
hold
sure seems
people,
that way.
I mean, I don't know. There's a fine line, because I think
I hear what you're saying, Buzz, but this is what I hope for Kandiss Taylor, because she says that she loves Jesus and she's a praying person, is that she should pray for insight and discernment, and that she comes to realize in a moment of wisdom that in the position that she is now, even as a failed candidate for office multiple times, that she has the ability to influence people. With some people, not a lot, but some, and that she should be more responsible in how she handles that ability, because with that ability comes responsibility, and she's not being responsible, and she's trying to say, don't tell me I'm part of this. I disagree with anything that's illegal, and I'll sue you. Well, come at me. Let's talk about. We'll go into court. And we'll put in discovery. I'll ask for an IQ test, and then we'll put it out there. And because I don't think you're very smart.
The thing, and Buzz, I'll let you come back around in a second, but the thing that I've said this before about Marjorie Taylor Greene, how she is the worst spokesperson for the causes she claims that she believes. And I hear Kandiss Taylor talk about, God and Jesus and all that stuff. Lady, I'm repulsed by you. And look, and I realize, because I'm the irreligious person on the podcast, but I don't care what religion you practice. I don't care if I'm governed by a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew or an atheist. I don't care. But I don't want to be governed by you. That's for damn sure. Because you are, God have mercy. You, if I were on the fence about Christianity, if I were saying, I'm interested in it, but people like her just really turn me off, I wouldn't step foot into a church because of people like her. Thankfully, I've already made up my mind about that stuff. But she is repulsing. And by the way, Kandiss Taylor, you lost the election. I want to repeat that. I realize you have a hard time understanding it, but you lost.
Well,
you didn't just lose, you
look,
got your ass
maybe
kicked.
I might have this attributing this quote to the wrong person, but I think it was Mark Twain who said their greatest source of atheism in the world is Christians who profess him but deny him, by name, but deny him by their actions. Yeah. I get it, Jason. You're right. It embarrasses me too, because it's this mixture of Christianity with politics to make some sort of new religion, and there's a strain on the right, and I think Kandiss Taylor represents it. And this, what she called Executive Order Number 10, where she would hop on a bulldozer and plow over the Guidestones. By what legal authority, I don't know. But there's this, and it's not a new phenomenon, but it seems to be gaining a bit of a resurgence in certain quarters of the right, and that is to use the power of government to bring about some sort of religious purity. And it's not just the right. There's the left has their own version of this. And I just started reading Noah Rothman's new book called The New Puritans about, and he's making the case that a lot of these folks on the left, they're acting like the Puritans of old and trying to enforce their will on everybody else, their preferred way of living. It's a big problem. It's not new in the United States. And I think Kandiss Taylor represents that. And we should absolutely resist that. The government should be, our founders put a government where the responsibility for living a moral life and having a peaceful community is on us. It should not be forced through government power and through government action. And Kandiss, doesn't believe that. Because she talked about all the sorts of things she wanted to do, which was enforce her version of Christianity on the rest of us. And it's well, I'm not gonna say she's not a Christian, because that speaks to her heart, but it's a public religion, not in keeping with our traditions as Americans.
There are two things. So that quote you read is also at the beginning of DC Talk's "What If I Stumble," which I remember listening to when I was a kid. And
hey, that was good.
I was like 11 or 12. Like, come on, like, give me a break. No, they weren't. Give me a break. But I'll say, Buzz, because you touched on a point. And we have talked about this a little bit, how politics has become a religion, but in particular when it comes to and look, I'm not trying to make a generalization here. I'm not trying to say this is everyone, but it does certainly seem that evangelical Christianity has moved away from attempting to save the souls of the people who don't believe in Jesus Christ, and are turning more towards political action to force it through law down people's throats. And I think that ultimately I'm saying that's in some corners. I'm not saying it's not pervasive. I think there's
a growing sense in the church that if they're not politically active, that their values are going to get rolled and will be viewed as extremist and hateful. And I think that's why you see many churches pushing back against like woke culture, right? Because what woke culture is telling the church, you're just a bunch of hateful, racist, bigoted people who hate gay people. And that's just not the case. But what is the church left to do but to defend itself? And or it's human nature. And much of Christianity is pushing back against our own human natures at times. But I think it's human nature to want to try to defend themselves.
Well, I guess I would say it's a little. If I'll just make one quick point, real quick, but I think that is less so now than it has been in the past. Yeah. And the reason I say that is Pat Robertson ran for president of the United States of America and brought millions of people into the Republican Party as a result of that. The Christian Coalition, is not influential at all anymore. But it was incredibly influential back around that time. Jerry Falwell and the Moral Majority, all of those things were going on. In the early in the 80s and 90s. None of those institutions are powerful at all anymore. There is no real gigantic, powerful Christian organization. Trump, played into some of that, I think, for the reasons that Scott mentioned, that there are a lot of folks, a lot of it in rural America, but also in other corners where they do feel like that our culture craps on them all the time, and they have there's some data to point to on that. But the way, and I think this is the way to fight back against that, is not through politics, it's through culture, it's through winning hearts and minds. And that's the way you do it. You convince people that your lifestyle is a better lifestyle and that you ought to live the lifestyle. And the way you convince people of doing that, kind of the St. Francis of Assisi, you show them by living it. You don't do it through force of government. And that's where I differ from folks like Kandiss Taylor and others who think, well, if we just get a president elected, that's not the American tradition, to think that we're going to get a president elected who's going to force cultural things down our throats and the throats of people who are unwilling.
Yep. So, by the way, I have a band in the DC area, and we've been practicing a lot. But we don't have a name yet, and I suggested a name the other day, and nobody seemed to bite on it. But I want to run it past you guys. It was the Culture Wars.
I can see why they didn't.
Was the band name that I proposed, and I can't do. We mostly. All we do is play cover songs, and it's mostly punk rock in '90s and early 2000s, like alternative cover songs. But I thought the Culture Wars was a damn good name. But I thought it was funny at the very least, and topical for a band in Washington D.C. But apparently I was wrong. Anyway, that is shout-outs. That is all the time we have. Before we go, I do want to give a shout out to our Patreons: John Vestal, Brant Frost, Reed Powell, Benjamin Hurst, and Sam Thomas. Thank you so much for sponsoring the show and being Patreons. If you too can become a Patreon of the Peach Pundit Podcast, all you need to do is go to patreon.com/peachpundit.
Yeah, it's patreon.com/peachpundit.
Is that right? Yeah. I forget. Hold on. That's right. Patreon.com/peachpundit. You can also find the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also watch the video on YouTube at peachpundit.com. And Scott,
okay, I just want to share Micah Gravel, the outgoing state representative from Paulding County, turned me on to a podcast. I want to share it with our audience and with you if you're into Georgia history at all. It's called In the Red Clay, and it's about the Dixie Mafia in the 60s and 70s. And a guy named Sean Kipe, who was here for one of the streaming services doing location scouting, ended up finding the story and talking to the son of a guy named Billy Sunday Burt, who was probably the most dangerous man in Georgia history, and ended up spending the rest of his life in jail. Not to ruin it for you, but there's a lot of story that goes into it. In the Red Clay, it's a very compelling, well done podcast, and it has several of the characters are people that we have met over the years. So definitely interesting if you are into the true crime type of stuff, and also Georgia history, this aspect of Georgia
Give us the name again.
In the Red Clay. It's at intheredclaypodcast.com is their website. It's available on Spotify for sure, which is where I have been listening to it, and is very, very well done.
Yeah.
We will link it. If Scott sends us the link, when Buzz writes the post for the podcast, we will link it in that post to make sure people get access to it. I certainly would like to listen to it on my drives around DC, especially in the mornings. There's the link. intheredclay.podcast.com, intheredclaypodcast.com. But that's all the time we have for today, folks. Thanks for watching all 1 hour and 15 minutes almost of this podcast.
I'm just mad I didn't buy a pair of the underwear. I mean, that's what I really. That's all. I should have.
On that note, peace out. Have a good
weekend.
We'll see you next week. Stay safe and party on, Wade.